to Snap Publishing, where we discuss the secrets of Edward Leeds Gallen's Coral Castle and how they pertain to the biblical narrative, the Temple of Solomon, the Zodiac, and modern DNA. I could get into, I've tried to cover this in the past and kind of stumbled, and it's how e to the power of I pi and also e equals mc squared ties into all this. And if you have e over here representing the east, and you have the mc2 over here, and that's an equation, it's balanced, this equals this. Okay, that expresses itself several ways in the Bible, and it's also right in front of you on a zodiac. And it's not just one way in the zodiac, it's several. And if you go north to south, where you have, let's see, Neptune, Poseidon, Noah, Zeus, that represents your north, then your south. And, that gets into Atlas, Naphtali, which is one of Jacob's kids, and Lithium. And that would be the balance beam. And this would be the arm, okay, or the scales. Again, this is the fulcrum. And you see a lot of scales built like this where there's a pot up top above. So all the weight is being carried down here, and then you have your base, which keeps it from tipping. Okay, that's expressed several times if you look at a zodiac. Virgo represents that. So Virgo would represent essentially the base, and then you would go look across from Virgo and you would see Aries, who is Judah, okay? And that would be the bottom and the top. And then your left and right extremes of that would be either Cancer or, let's see, what is it, Gemini, Cancer, or on the other side you would have Sagittarius and Capricorn. Take your pick, okay? But that is essentially a balance beam, okay, and a fulcrum. So when you see the mathematical equation, quantum physics equation of E equals mc squared, you're saying that. You're saying that E, energy, is Eastern rotation. Like I say, if you follow what Jesus is saying about toil and spin, consider the lilies, for they neither toil nor spin. Okay? Now, what are the lilies? If they're not spinning, what are they doing? They're going up and down. Okay? They're creating the wave. So you have this agitator, like some modern washing machines, going up and down. That's this, people, men and women, making babies. All right? So they neither toil nor spin, but even Solomon wasn't arrayed like these lilies, right? So I don't want to get into what Cain versus Abel. That's white light versus dark or black. It's white and black, black and white. Black and white duking it out the same way, positive, negative, duke it out. It always comes back to the 1 and the 0, or the 1 or the 0. It always reduces back, unless you get to the beginning, that's the magnetic monopole, known as God. All the everything that can never be accurately defined. So toil and spin is T oil and SPIN, rotation. Okay? It's north-south, and then the east-west. And the E equals mc squared, that center beam is the equal sign. And your E is over here, and your MC2 is over here. And I could talk at length about when the ancient Hebrews were given manna. And today you hear about Vimana, the Vimana in Hinduism, in the Mahabharata. That's the same thing. Okay, when they looked at this, picture it as a type of wafer that was like, I call it, ancient baklava. It was like honey and sweet and nutritious. And they said, what is it? They had no way to define what it was. And essentially, there's a lot of things that fall into that category. Like you cannot really define what God is. So God is a type of manner. Okay. But energy, okay, that is a source of energy, a very particular source of energy. When it says V mana, that's talking about a woman, the V, okay? The tabernacle, the tent flaps versus a male. Okay, so you hear this term etheron energy. You look at the Greek, and they're not the only language that does this. They put an AE combination. Ether is AETHER or ETHER. That AE means Adam and Eve energy. Okay, so in other words, this reciprocating motion and then the spin. All right, and you see this, it goes right by you in these Hollywood scripts. If you watch John Carter, right, it was considered a movie flop. I thought it was a fantastic movie. Very good sci-fi type action adventure movie. And she asks him how he came to the knowledge or the strength that he did, and he told his story. And she said, "Oh, I know why you're the way you are. You're a Thurn." And the Thurn were those evil people that were behind the scenes trying to mess things up. I talked about those earlier. They're the E4 from the movie 300. They're the vampires from Blade, in my opinion. I can't prove any of this. I'm telling you, this is... Pay attention, folks. They're getting stuff over on you, and you don't even know why this term Thurn comes up. Okay, the Thurn are etheron. It's the etheron energy that runs in the backdrop of all things. If you get into modern gyroscopes and how they came to be, they're very advanced. One of the most advanced things mankind has ever conceived and perfected. Okay, the spin vector chases the torque vector. This is the same thing. The S, South Pole, is chasing the cross. The female, when Adam and Eve ate the fruit, the curse upon woman is that her desire would be towards the man. This is an archaic way of saying her spin vector will chase the torque vector. Once you realize this, you're like, oh, that totally makes sense. The S, which is the minus, parentheses, little slash, the need, the garden of need, the vacuum energy seeks out, like cold seeks the hot, same thing, right? You have these weather patterns. What are they doing? They're essentially the same thing. It's the spin vector chasing the torque vector. You're saying the same thing 100 different ways. Once you make the connection, you're like, so the toil and spin that Jesus spoke about is torque vector and spin vector chasing it. Yes, and if you go into Song of Songs, it says, be like a roe or a young hart upon the mountains of Bether, Bether. That's sine waves. Okay, be like a roe or young hart. There's left, right sine waves and up, down side waves. The way a shark swims versus a dolphin and a whale. Okay, and whales and dolphins they're like us, they're mammals. That's why they're different than sharks. So it's saying the same thing. Okay, the spin vector chasing the torque vector. That's like saying, well, if the up, down is the positive, negative, the spin chasing the torque, then the left, right represents the shark, the predator, right? Well, they're both technically predators. But so you have to realize, wait a minute, is the S and T also space and time? Yes! They're all the same thing. And once you realize, wow, it really is a Russian doll. It's the layering of an onion. I'm going to leave this right here. And it's this. And I want to get into this, by the way. I wanted to bring this out to show you. Wherever you see this center weight, you'll notice there's an axis here and an axis here. Okay, there's a pole where the axle is, but it's also out here and here. And then it's out here and here. Okay? So one thing can have many ways of describing it, and they're all the same thing. It's hard to believe, but it's true. Once I looked at the zodiac, and then I made the connection. I'm like, wait a minute, this is the XY axis. That's when I started connecting east west, Ephraim Manasseh, and then Rachel Leah, which is clockwise, counterclockwise. Okay? Once I started doing that, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Rene Descartes, he didn't discover that XY. He took it from over here and brought it over here. And then they planted their flag on it and said, oh, yeah, we figured it out. Just like the guys who said, oh, yeah, we created the pyramid. No, you didn't. Now, I'm going to stop the video real quick, and I'm going to go get another model for you to see. This is the Temple of Solomon. I've talked about this earlier, where you got your intake, that's your outer court. From here out, outer court. And you got your compression chamber where they squeeze down all the intake. And then you have a source of ignition and combustion. Okay, that's, what do you call it? The oil lamp, what they call the candlestick, and the shewbread are located. This ignition source is the altar of incense, the AI or the IA. And where the combustion takes place is the Holy of Holies. And then out here, where the exhaust takes place, that is the noble gases. That is also toil and spin. It's once you realize, man, all this stuff, it's just, and then like they talk about how that, what I just showed you, was invented at the exact same time by a German man and an Englishman. And science has no way to quantify that. They're like, how did these two people have the same exact, they went right to their drafting tables. And the Germans' design is what we use in modern fighter jets. But the Englishman invented what's known as a turbofan. So that's used in modern commercial engines, turbine engines. So there were slight variations of each other. But people are like, how did that happen? Because it's imprinted in our atomic structure in the form of Solomon's Temple, which is the periodic table mirror imaged. These things exist inside of us. It's hard to believe, but it's mind-boggling. And people will deny this. Like I say, modern science is going to shoot blood from its eyes, saying that guy, Snap Publishing, they're flat out crazy. They're making Looney Tune claims. Don't believe them. Because at the very top of their structure, the very top of their college system, the very top of their monetary system, those people know. They're not looking at this going, this guy's a crackpot. They're saying, right now, men way more powerful than me are saying, how did this imbecile figure this out? So we're going to leave that right there. We're going to move on for time's sake. I'm going to go to another page here. I don't want to bog down in the E equals MC squared thing. I'm going to eat that a little, one bite at a time, because it's very difficult to explain this to people because they don't believe it's true. They don't believe that it exists in other forms, sociologically, in human behavior. That formula is just as pertinent as it is for building nuclear bombs. And by the way, I'll get to the scriptures. I'll quote them for you. And you get into Genesis. I believe it's Genesis. Yes, it's Genesis, where it says, Joseph was forbidden to bring his family members who were cattle ranchers. They were tough people. Jacob's children were tough guys. They were not to be messed with. They were badasses. Okay? Anyone who rustles cattle and breaks horses, they're tough people. Same thing with anyone who's in a what do you call it? A port area, like Dutch people. They're tough people because it's a port area and they deal with a lot of shenanigans. And that's where all the clubs are and the bar rooms. And you run into a lot of people from Holland. They're tough people. Tough people. And that's why the English were tough. Port areas produce tough men. But you'll find hard men in a lot of different areas where there's a lot of trees being timbered, big structures, steel structures, power lines, where the big power lines are, that's where you find the big boys. Okay, I did both, the little ones and the big ones, and the ones underground. The Egyptians were forbidden to break bread or eat with the Jews, the Hebrews. Why? Because Egypt, that got something taken from it. It was gypped. That's E minus. That's an electron. So what does Egypt represent? Static electricity. I just told you those. Oh, we don't know what these obelisks are. Yes, they do. They let off the static charges. Okay? You could call it diffusers. It acted like a diffuser, or there's a term I can't think of it. I'm having a brain fog. But anyway, Egypt is the electron. The fall of Lucifer, Jesus said when the apostles came back, they said, hey, wow, look at, we had these results. And they were really happy with casting out all these demons in the name of Jesus. And he said to them, I saw Lucifer fall. I saw Lucifer as lightning fall. He's saying that Lucifer is the electron. It's electricity. God is not electricity. God contains electricity. God understands it, created it, has full control of it. Okay, that's why when you read the book of Job, where it says, can you put a lobster trap or a crab pot or a cage around Leviathan and parcel out his body parts to the merchants? Okay? Will you treat him like a bird in a cage? That cage is a Faraday cage. He's talking about electricity. A bolt of lightning. I saw Lucifer, or I saw Satan as it was, fall. So in other words, when Jesus' apostles were out there doing these things, Jesus was in a meditative state and he relived the moment God cast Lucifer down. And when you see lightning hit the ground, that's what that is. Okay? So when it says that the Jews and the Egyptians were forbidden to break bread with each other because it was an abomination to the Egyptians, that literally is a-bomb a nation. Like building an A-bomb, an atom bomb, and drop it on a nation. There's certain people that you can't put in the same room. They'll kill each other. You don't want to mess with the Hasidic Haredi. You don't want to mess with the Amish. You don't go into these people's area. They live a certain way and they want their peace and quiet. Don't go near them. They'll beat you with baseball bats. It's a fact. If you want to convert to their ways, that's different. They'll take you in. But you're going to live by their rules. You break their rules, they're going to square you away. They're tough, hard people. And they have standards. Very high standards. Highest moral standards there are. So you have to understand that this battle between Egyptians and Jews in the book of Genesis, where it says they couldn't break bread together, Jacob's kids didn't get along with these upper crust elitist Egyptians. And that Pharaoh was a good Pharaoh. He was very fair to them. It was the Pharaoh who came after this guy who was not a good person. Okay? They had forgotten Joseph and the things that Joseph did for their nation, to rescue their nation. They forgot. They had short-term memory loss, which is not uncommon. So this battle between these two groups, just take it back to the original. Who was the original? Adam versus Eve, God versus the devil, good versus evil. It's 1 versus 0. It's positive versus negative, repulsive versus attractive. They can't be in the same place because they're going to do one of two things. That is what abomination means. Now, like I said earlier, I didn't want to really get into the E equals MC squared and how that pertains to this. But that A-bomb is a fission bomb, and then there's a fusion bomb. A thermonuclear is fusion. They're squeezing everything in. The original A-bomb was a fission. It was exploding out. You put highly processed plutonium and highly processed uranium, put them together and look out. So to set off a thermonuclear bomb, what they call a hydrogen bomb, you have to have an atomic explosion. So they condense this atomic explosion, which gets everything squeezed together and forces them to be together. Okay, this is done with humans. I lived through the busing issue back in the 70s where they forced all these ethnic groups to get along. Did it work? No, it didn't. They say, oh yeah, it did. Well, things came of it. You can't say it was 100% bad, but it was 95% bad. And a lot of people made a ton of money off that. Okay, had those people making money have been affected, yeah, they wouldn't have done it. So they'll do things at your expense, but not at theirs. Okay, so that is how they get these groups to come together. Okay, and they live up in their ivory towers, unaffected. They're insulated and isolated from the real world. And that's what they're doing. They're putting the Hebrews and the Egyptians in the same room. That is what they're doing. They're putting the devil and God together. They're putting these people who want to harm children with guys like me who raised children, and we don't play. You don't touch kids. That is the absolute do not do. To cross that line and you're going to find out. They're putting these people in the same place, okay, because they're not affected by it. Okay, that is the equivalent of what you're reading about why they wouldn't break bread with each other. They don't see eye to eye. This pagan stuff, we don't get along with it. Okay, we don't believe Jesus is Lucifer cleverly disguised. We believe that there was a day where Lucifer and God got along and Lucifer blew it. Lucifer face planted. So did Adam and Eve, but God is in the forgiveness business. And the devil hates that. The devil, even Christians today, will tell you all these OF fans, women can never get right with God. They're always going to have that on their record. I'm here to disagree. Okay? Is there a lot of them that are phony balonies? I believe there are. There's a percentage of them that they're never going to be right. But there's a percentage of them that hit the rock, so to speak. And they really get God. Okay? Deep on the inside. And it changes them. Okay, well, thanks for tuning in. And I want to remind you to hit the like button and subscribe, and to check out down in the links the link tree.